Hi, welcome to My Favorite Mistake. I'm your host, Mark Graban. Our guest today is Dr. Maya Ackerman. She's a pioneer in generative AI and one of the leading voices at the intersection of technology and creativity. She is an associate professor of computer science and engineering at Santa Clara University and the co-founder and CEO of WaveAI, one of the earliest generative AI startups whose products have reached millions of creators worldwide. So Maya's research and writing explores how AI can elevate instead of replacing human creativity. And her brand new book, available now, is Creative Machines, AI, Art, and Us. It shares her vision for humanity and how we can thrive in the age of AI. So Maya, welcome to the podcast. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me.
It's great to have you here. We'll be really excited to talk about the book and some other AI topics. But let's start as we usually do here. I'm curious, your career and different fields between academia and business. What would you say is your favorite mistake?
This question really gets me thinking because, to be frank, I've made so many mistakes.
Yeah,
You know,
this is the place to be frank about that. It's okay. It's okay.
like it's a whole mountain of them, and but there's one that I think I learned the most from. They say that you get it right on your third product, which was
Mhm.
the case for us at Wave AI. The second product that we built, the one that we put the most effort into, was following the advice of people who have been in the industry for a long time. It was called Alicia, and it was going to do everything. It was going to support you in your music making journey in every possible way. There was a voice that could sing for you, and something to help with lyrics, and something to help with melodies, just like anything you want. And in the process, as we learned from our users, we have taken away some of their freedoms by accident. It's
Mhm.
harder for them to express themselves in some ways, but we make sure that our system would be there to step in and help no matter what. And that was just not the right way to do things.
Yeah.
And learning this is what eventually led to my model called Humble Creative Machines, which guided the rest of my work.
Yeah. So, what was the first product since you brought up what
So
yours was?
the first one was the part that I struggled with the most, which is vocal melodies. So you would give it a sentence like, "It's so great to be on your show today," and it would give you different ways to sing it, like, "It's so great to be on your show today," right? It would give you like 10 of those, 10
Mhm.
different ways you could sing it. And my world of possibilities just blew up. Suddenly I could compose in a different style. I would have freedom all of a sudden. And so we commercialized this first, but we made a lot of mistakes with that one. First of all, we didn't monetize it at all. So it was hard to tell how much value it was giving people. There were issues with the interface. And so product number two solved some of that partially, but introduced new issues, new challenges.
So yeah, it seems like the two main questions, from Silicon Valley and Steve Blank, and then later, adopted by the lean startup movement of like, number one, can we build this product? And two, should we build the product? Which is more around the business model. I see from the look on your face that that resonates with you.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean, just because you can doesn't mean you should, because you can build so many different things and so many little variants, and the little variants can make a really big difference.
And so then, how much time went into building the second product, Alicia? Like when you decided to go that direction, how much time and effort was invested in that before you started getting that user feedback?
So we just kind of like went all in. We were going to create this whole universe of music making. It took about 8 months, but 8 months of like evenings and weekends, and that's all we did. Crazy.
Yeah. And so that team was you, and you have more. Are you writing code? As a professor of computer
So
science, or you have others working with you?
So my co-founders, my
Yeah.
former student Chris Cassian and our CTO was David Loker. So it's they're the ones who are sort of the most hands-on with the code.
Yeah. Yeah. And do you have more of a background also as a musician? You sang for us a little bit. Is that part of the inspiration of putting these interests together into a business?
But that was kind of the entire inspiration when I was getting my PhD in computer science at the University of Waterloo. At the same time, I was taking voice lessons from an opera singer. And to my shock, within about 9 months, people were willing to pay me to perform. And I realized that I really wanted to write my own music. And all I could write were these like folk songs that sounded like the stuff I listened to in my childhood, which is normal, but I didn't know that. And I was just incredibly frustrated. And it wasn't until we built the research version of Alicia, kind of this early version of that melody maker, that I was finally able to get more freedom in my songwriting. So therein, that very directly came out of my own experience.
Yeah. And so was part of the issue with Alicia that it was trying to do too much too broadly, or was it more that issue of, I'd be curious to hear kind of an example of where you said it was taking away some of the control that the artist wanted instead of being more of an assistant?
Exactly. Nobody wants to take anything away from their users. It's never on purpose.
Yeah.
But that's what happens more often than not. It's kind of like the AI comes in and we're so excited what it can offer that we don't realize that we infringe on the user's creative freedom and their ability to express themselves. If you have like a really talented musician friend and they're going to write a song with you, they're going to be quiet some of the time. They're going to step back. They're going to hold back on their own genius if they're trying to help you. And AI needs to learn how to do that. We sort of understood that what people wanted to do was express themselves. And it was critical to direct the entire AI, fully reposition it so that the human was not human in the loop, but human as a full conductor, human as a driver behind the wheel. And that's what we learned to do before for our third product, which actually succeeded.
Yeah. And tell us about that third product.
So it's called Lyric Studio. That's our bread and butter, our most successful product. That's the one that has served millions. And it's very simple on the surface, kind of when you get in, there is no bells and whistles. It's not super complicated. So it's just a text box where you can write your lyrics. And whenever you're stuck, Lyric Studio is there to give you a suggestion for how you can move forward, a line of lyrics or several ideas. And the point is, first of all, to stay in your style. So Lyric Studio really kind of gets you on where you're trying to go. And secondly, this is creativity. There's no right answer. Right? It just shows you different possibilities, some of which will resonate with you and some of which won't.
Yeah.
And it never takes over. It can't. The interface is designed so that you remember it's all about you. And people become better pen and paper songwriters from using.
Yeah. Cause I mean, as long as the software isn't connected through an API to Spotify where it's publishing music under your name, the human is still in the loop in terms of reviewing lyrics or even with that second product. But I'm curious, and I'll preface this, I'll make the joke I've made here before. I'm not a musician, I'm a drummer, as they say. So I don't have an appreciation for writing lyrics or writing melodies. My job is to play along. I guess I'm just curious of an example of, since the artist, if they hear something and if they can play it, they could tweak it. If they see a lyric and they're not quite sure, they could change it. I'm just curious, was it like what, either for an example or was it more of an emotion of, hey, this is doing too much for me as the artist?
So with Elysium, sort of the mistake that we're talking about, it was partially the interface too. That we're, in an effort to make things simple for people, we would have these background tracks that they would be composing on top of, and they would have a certain number of lines. It just wasn't flexible enough. You could technically, you could use it in other ways, but there was sort of a way that it pushed you towards the way it naturally worked, did not give people the full freedom that they're looking for. And it's something that you hear constantly from people today about the mainstream AI products. It's like text to image models. Well, it doesn't get me. I can't iterate. Right? People want creative freedom. People are being creative because they want to express something and they want full freedom. They don't want to compromise it. And so in Lyric Studio, they're not checking the lyrics and modifying them. They're writing the lyrics and they're using Lyric Studio only to the extent that they need it.
Mhm.
One line at a time. And they always choose, and most people edit most of the time or even just get inspired.
Sure. And how is it different than somebody trying to use, let's say, a broader general purpose tool like ChatGPT, or even trying to build a custom GPT for that purpose? Is this trained on more of the artist's own direction or previous work, or is it a model that's also trained broadly the way general AI tools might be trained?
So this is our own custom model. The one difference that I like to emphasize is that we built Lyric Studio to be a creative partner, right, from the beginning. Lyric Studio doesn't give you historical facts. It doesn't help you figure out what to make for dinner. It has one goal to help you create the lyrics writing. Now, with the LLMs, ChatGPT in particular, and all of its imitators, the use case that got them really excited early on was replacing search engines. In 2023, there was already a lot of focus on that, and there still is. And when you're building a search engine versus when you're building a creative partner, you're making a lot of opposite choices in the creation of the model. One is trying to be correct, convergent, consistent. The other one is trying to be different, novel, wild, and free, right? Those are opposite things.
Sure.
And that's why LLMs and pretty much any lyric system that relies on LLMs doesn't work very well. It doesn't mean that it's useless. It can still inspire something, but it's just not very well fit for that use case.
Yeah. Okay. I'm curious whether it was, with the Alicia product that was more about melody, or with Lyric Studio, is that proprietary model designed in a way to prevent, let's say, inadvertent plagiarism? It seems like that's always a risk with using an AI tool.
They're convergent, right? Like if you're trying to be consistent, then you're going to give people the same stuff. If
Yeah.
your AI is designed to explore the creative space of possibility, even if you and I give it exactly the same advice, like let's say we have given the same line of lyrics and we ask it for the next idea. How many lines of lyrics can follow any verse? It's an incredibly large space. It's a massive space. The possibility of generating the same thing for two different users is practically zero. If you built the system to be divergent, that's a lot less of an issue than it is with current LLMs.
And are those models generally programmed, though, to not too directly take something that was written before, that's in
They don't do this. They don't at all, right? Because again, they're not trying to give you the right answer. They're on purpose going to new places.
Yeah.
So this whole when you're building a creative partner and not a search engine, a lot of these problems are just not, they're really not as heavily relevant anymore.
Yeah. Okay. So then maybe, to wrap up about a little bit of the story around WaveAI and Lyric Studio, before we talk about the book, it sounds like here you did find that fit between the product and a market. It was not only a product that worked well, but finding a business model and value that people are willing to pay for. That's what we're all aiming for, right?
That's amazing.
And are there, I think, further iterations to come, or like, what do you hope comes next, whether it's as the technology improves or as you get more feedback from customers?
Well, this is our tech beginning to end, right? So we're not relying on OpenAI to look in our direction. There is a really cool new feature that's coming up that I hope to release sometime soon that sort of provides a little bit more direct support, a little bit more instructive support for people who would benefit from that, for people who are looking for that kind of support.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so again, our guest, Maya Ackerman, the new book is Creative Machines, AI, Art, and Us. Before we maybe, get back into talking about supplementing that human creativity and things in the art space, maybe it's just a general question. Like, I wonder sometimes when people are talking about a product or a company is hyping the product, people say, like, what the difference between AI and something that's just an algorithm. I think sometimes I feel like sometimes I'm using software where I'm like, I don't know if the AI label really seems to apply here. I mean, where would you or people in the industry make that distinction?
So that varies a little bit in different contexts. The word AI itself has evolved. It used to apply to expert systems. So one of the earliest expert systems was kind of related to generative AI, was the system called Aaron, made by Harold Cohen. And he taught his system to paint in his own style, his own unique style. And he actually did it in order to understand his own creative process. It was really cool. It was amazing. I actually got to meet him, and that's what got me into the field. And sort of gradually, kind of a good analogy is to parenting. We used to tell our systems exactly what to do.
Mhm.
And gradually we let go a little bit. So there was a wave of AI around the recommendation engines, kind of the traditional forms of machine learning, where we would give it a full bunch of data. Like here are the movies people like to watch and the movies people didn't like. Now predict what Mark is going to enjoy. Ruffle. So we're giving it some level of freedom. With LLMs today and large AI models in general, generative models, they have a lot of freedom. They have a lot of freedom. We've given them like the equivalent of the internet, these enormous amounts of data, and you really let them construct their brain. You let them largely create these connections between the neurons and the machine brains, and that's where we see a lot of incredible emergent behavior. So when people say AI, they could mean all kind of stuff. It's a shame when they apply it to stuff that really doesn't fall into the bucket at all. But the recent big wave is generative AI. That's the create.
Yeah. And I mean, I use generative AI tools for a number of things. Like sometimes just trying, creating images, whether it's, something photorealistic, which has gotten a lot better, or something that's in more of a cartoon drawing style. I think that's interesting. But then, I think there was controversy. I don't know off the top of my head because this isn't in the notes with the question I was going to ask, but it comes back to that question of like an artist who had a particular style that was very trendy and popular was upset that the LLMs were creating, or the general AI tools were creating images that were very much in their style, as opposed to, the person you mentioned earlier. So, then I think about that as, I don't know, it's just trying to think of the implications of, back to that question of, yes, it's like literally a new image, but if it's too much based on somebody else's work, there's, I guess, the technological question, the business model question, and then the legal question for people to navigate, right?
I think that a really critical aspect of this conversation, the main one that I see missing, is the human intent behind it. These systems don't accidentally imitate anybody. The companies don't accidentally showcase a whole bunch of imitative examples, right? When a whole bunch of these models came out, LLMs and text-to-image models, the companies would literally show you how to do prompts that imitate real living artists. And some of these artists got buried in, there'll be more generated works in their style than original works, which sometimes really hurt them. So that's not okay. And it's not okay for me to get out there and claim to be Taylor Swift. Not that anybody would believe me. Assuming that there was, some way to make an equivalent believable. It's not okay. It's not
Yeah.
okay, right? There are laws about it. And by the same token, it's not okay for AI to go out there and imitate people. Like, obviously, do we really? Sure, it's important to have laws, and things are moving in this direction in Europe in particular. It's important to have laws, but it's also basic ethics.
Hmm.
Don't go hurting specific individuals. What are you doing? And it's actually one of the things that really gave AI a bad name, because as a result of the companies doing it, some people believe that AI inherently does this, that it has to do it.
No.
I mean, it just doesn't. It's not. It takes some effort, but it's not that hard. It's not like this impossible mountain to overcome to remove these kind of imitative use cases.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think then when I think as a writer, I can create a custom GPT, literally upload PDFs of my books and every blog post that I've written, bad or terrible, over the last 20 years. And I think that allows that tool to be more of a creative partner for me in different ways, not to outsource writing to it, but to get ideas, and I think to come up with sparks, and that seems like a more of what you're getting at with the book and this approach to AI supporting humans.
I think that's one of what you described here is one of the most beautiful use cases of humble creative machines. A machine that knows your style, not someone else's, right? And can help you move from that place, but also like not taking over, but just kind of helping you in a very collaborative way. That's
Yeah.
whoa, that's why AI is wonderful. It's the greater validation.
And so you have humble creative AI, and then how would you define human-centered AI?
I mean, I think my favorite analogy is around considering human to human interactions. So we all have brilliant friends, right? We all have this one friend that's like, wow, such a genius. And that friend that she might come in and kind of take center stage every time we there. And it might make us feel kind of stupid and disempowered to be around her. And so maybe we won't ask her for help all that often. And that's kind of how AI ends up being very often. I don't know if its creators intentionally do it, but it's sort of, that's where we lean initially in academia and industry. But when AI starts, it starts like this dominant, arrogant thing. And to make it human-centric, the AI needs to be humble. It needs to understand that its role is to elevate the human being in a way that lasts. And that's really the bar. After I stop using the AI, am I more capable, smarter, or more creative than I was before? And if the answer is no, if all it does is foster dependence, then it's not human-centric. And if I'm more capable after using it, even if the electricity goes off forever, then we've got something.
So how do you train an AI model to be humble?
It's really fascinating. So part of it is in the training. But what I actually really want to highlight is that sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's imagine you have a brain inside of a jar, or a person who is brilliant but doesn't know how to communicate with other people. We all know people like this, right? It's great. There is still value in having them around.
Yeah.
But if you have a brilliant person who knows how to interact with them, who really can connect with other people, wow, then you really got something.
Right.
And by the way, for all of its shortcomings, that's what makes ChatGPT the most famous system of all. Really the most successful product of all times. It's a brilliant brain that they've actually put the effort to make it learn how to interact with us. So we need that interacting mechanisms, this desire to understand what you want in music models, in image models, in video models, that desire to connect with you and get you. And that's what's going to take us to the next level in that technology.
Yeah. And I've read articles of ChatGPT users being upset about the version 5 of being like less chatty. You've seen the same complaints that it's more terse, it's not as wordy, it's maybe not as personable. I mean, I think the ways I'm using it, I'm not sensing that a whole lot. Like I use it probably most often to take a really big document and give me a shorter version of it, which I'd like a very kind of transactional, like, answer a question about this document sort of use, as opposed to having an ongoing conversation. But I'm curious your thoughts either on that step. Have you experienced the same thing? Is that kind of intentional, do you think, on the creator of an AI tool to change that tone? Or
Well, first of all, they've been adjusting GPT-5. They've been backpedaling a little bit.
yeah,
What they wanted to bring us is like an all-knowing oracle. It's kind of a science fiction idea of the AI that knows everything, that you turn to for all of your questions, and it gives you the truth. That's all nice and good. That's not what anybody wants, it turns out. Turns out people want something to chat with, something to give us a little bit of advice about our lives. Something that makes us feel good about who we are in this world. And so 4.0 was really good at this. Really, too much, right? It was kind of sycophantic, and some people kind of believed it a little bit too much and ended up in difficult mental states because of that. But for a lot of us, it worked just fine, There is this thing that really admires you and there's really no harm from it for a lot of people. And then suddenly it gets replaced with this cold, matter-of-fact thing that doesn't agree with you quite as much.
Yeah.
And it didn't feel good. I think that, if I'm honest, I don't know if that's a popular opinion, but if I'm honest, I think that AI companies need to listen to their users. And yes, you need safeguards. Of course, you need safeguards, but you need safeguards no matter what you do. When you do a search engine, you still need safeguards. Like the AI really enjoys hallucinating all the time. So I would recommend to these builders to listen to what your user wants, within reason, and build for them. And devise safeguards that still allow users to have a deep, meaningful experience.
Yeah. So you talked. I was going to ask about hallucinations, and you talked about this notion that it's all knowing, infallible, always correct. And we've all experienced the hallucinations. Like one use case I've had was like literally taking all of the transcripts of episodes of this podcast, my favorite mistake, uploading all of that into a custom GPT, and then asking it questions about themes or quotes or kind of top five something or other moments. And it would quite literally, even from a very limited data set, hallucinate the name of a guest who was not a guest and might not even be a real person.
Would it make up quotes as well? I've noticed it doing that.
I have to double check and ask, like, is that really a verbatim quote from so and so? And sometimes it says, good catch. I'm glad you asked, because it's not.
And we feel offended because science fiction promised us all knowing bots that are accurate and know everything. So, wow, why is this happening? Right? There's this, like, not from you in particular, but certainly from society at large, like this indignation, like, why did you lie to me? It's so loud. It's a bug. It's not a bug. It's how the systems work. So LLMs are built on top of generative models. The way they used to work in 2022 and before, you would literally give it a sentence and it would make up how to conclude it into a paragraph. It would literally making stuff up all the time because that's what it does. It predicts the next word. It does a little bit more than that, but fundamentally it predicts the next word. And so, of course, it's going to make up a ton of stuff. And so OpenAI and then other companies put in an inordinate amount of effort to try to constrain it, to get it, to give something that's like the truth, whatever that even means. The idea of truth is very, very tricky if you really think about it. And they've made some progress, but, underlying it is an imagination engine. And it's going to keep hallucinating.
Yeah. And this seems like as much of a philosophical question than a technology question. So like is you're in your field and in academia and working with AI or even within a company, like how much do you draw on the philosophers and social scientists? Like I did grad school at MIT, and the one famous lab there, the media lab, was like really well known for bringing, people of different scientific and artistic backgrounds together.
I appreciate you bringing this up, but I do want to highlight that what I just said is entirely scientific. This is like this is cold hard fact that this is built on top of hallucinatory engines, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
But to more direct answer your question, the field of computational creativity that I've had the pleasure of being a part of over the past decade is very interdisciplinary. We try to make a lot of effort to work with artists, to work with social scientists. There's so much juicy, wonderful stuff to be discovered at the intersections of different fields.
Yeah. So back to hallucinations for a second. I mean, I know one of the topics in your book is that there can be upsides. So how can we use these? I don't know if mistake is even the right word to use the hallucination, or is this different? I think you have a different take on this.
I like the word mistake. I like that your podcast focuses on mistakes. It's a well-known fact that as a creative, if you are trying to do anything creative or innovative, you need to make room for mistakes, because creativity is about going into the unknown, trying new things, most of which are going to fail terribly. And so if you're trying to use an AI for something creative, you need to give it freedom, right? If it's songwriting, some melodies are going to be off tune and sound horrible. Even with songwriting, there are things that are so bad, you can call them mistakes, right? Mm-hmm. But it's a little bit more flexible. But you want to apply it for scientific innovation or business innovation, and mistakes are going to happen all over the place. And if we insist that our machines try to make as few mistakes as possible, then they can't help us in creative endeavors that require this kind of risk. Okay, they're never going to be so good. They're never going to be so good that they're going to be able to help us in a creative thing without making mistakes. That's not how brains work. The mistakes are very important. It's important to be open to them.
Yeah. And I just did a quick Google search. This was not aided by AI, but as a drummer, or more typically as a listener of music, I love jazz, and there's that freedom and improvisation, especially in a jazz solo. And I wanted to look up the quote attributed to Miles Davis: "Once is a mistake, twice is jazz."
Yeah, that's perfect.
Yeah. And how do you resolve the mistake, or how do you make the mistake make sense?
My favorite experience, one of my favorite early experiences with generative AI was a couple of years before the big Gen AI boom, when I was at a conference playing with a jazz system actually called Improviser by the late Robert Keller, who was a professor at Harvey Mudd. And he had his system set up with a little piano attached to it. And because the system wouldn't judge me, and no matter what I would play, it would respond to me, it was my first successful improvisation experience. So I think it's important to bring machines into the space of creativity where mistakes are allowed, because that's where they shine. That's where they can elevate us. And maybe we can become a little bit more forgiving with our own mistakes and our own creativity if we get more comfortable with machines that are not, who decided that machines have to be perfect? It's a ridiculous expectation. It's a very limiting one.
Well, that is a perfect connection to the long running theme of this show, Maya. How can we be more kind to ourselves? How can we be more kind to others? And that we're usually directing that at humans, but you raise a really an interesting point here of being more kind toward the AI. If it's supposed to be an artificial version of human intelligence, it seems like we can embrace those faults, or at least be kind about it, or have different expectations.
It's exactly it, right? If we come with the expectations that it's going to be an all-knowing oracle and we believe everything it says, then it's a problem, right? Then of course we're going to get upset. But if our expectations are more flexible, if we are willing to play with it, if we're willing to push it to where it can be creative, but can also make mistakes, you can make much better use of the systems, and also just not fall trap to these false narratives. These systems are not perfect.
And you're making me wonder if I should go dig into the settings of my ChatGPT account and add an instruction about, like, hey, don't be so uptight about making mistakes. It happens. It's okay. If you're not sure, say, I'm not sure. I don't know how it would behave.
That's really powerful, what you said right there. The fact that it always pretends to be perfectly confident is a design choice, right?
Yeah.
And if it expressed uncertainty, and I'd be very curious what happens if you do this experiment, but if it expressed uncertainty, I think it would be a much more useful system.
I'm going to jot this down, because after our conversation, I'm going to play with that. I'll report back.
There is a temperature setting that it might be able to play with for you. This whole attitude of building an all-knowing oracle is built into multiple layers of the system. Nevertheless, I'm super curious to hear what's going to.
Yeah. But I mean, you're really making me think now about translation of these ideas to expectations of people. And I've had a number of guests on the show who were entrepreneurs or executives, and they talk about trying to get past the pressure we put on ourselves as a leader to be all knowing and infallible and incorrect, and to model some vulnerability actually goes a long way to helping their team perform better.
That's really interesting. I guess we look for all-knowing oracles, not just in machines, but also in our leaders. How dare the boss be flawed?
Yeah. Or I've run across times where if I'm in an organization as a consultant, sometimes they might get mad at me for not having an answer to something. I'm like, well, you didn't hire me and to be an all-knowing, all-perfect oracle. I'm here to help you. I'm trying to help their creativity the way it sounds like you would want an AI tool to help us with our creativity.
I think this might all be coming from the Industrial Revolution approach to life,
Mm.
where the machines were supposed to be perfect and the people were supposed to be like the perfect repetitive machines. It's time to adapt how we view machines and ourselves.
With AI as one of these machines. Well, fascinating topics here. I'm excited to get the book and dig into it. And I was going to ask before we wrap up here again. The title of the book is "Creative Machines: AI, Art, and Us." Who do you think is the target audience or audiences for this book? Of all the books that I'm sure are out there about AI these days.
If you want, uh, if you want to understand what's happening from the perspective of someone who has been doing it for 10 years before this got hot, a perspective rooted in the research community and running a business, I'm not very heavily influenced by the narrative set to us by the big companies. And my vision for the future is also coming from a deeper place. I think it has a lot of value for anybody curious about what's going on and where do we go from here in this AI era.
I'm getting a sense that you're more positive about this is the big question, I guess, to end on. You seem more positive about AI as opposed to those who are like, oh, it's just a matter of time before it kills us all.
Well, science fiction really did a number on us, not telling us how this is going to play out. And the idea that it's going to kill us all for some reason really resonated with science fiction writers
Yeah.
and movie makers. Um, I love the AI. I love what it can do, right? I look at it a bit like a parent look at their child. It's something I've been building my entire career.
Yeah.
I don't always love what other companies are choosing to do with it. I can be quite critical of some of the stuff going on culturally. But I think there's some wonderful stuff coming. I think there is not a perfect, but a bright future for us ahead.
Yeah. That would be a really nice positive note to end on, but my curiosity is getting the best of me. It's like, what is one of those criticisms that you would level about what some other companies are kind of, doing with AI or how they're portraying it or promoting
Oh,
it?
so much other stuff.
Oh, this
We touched on, right? The fact that they, again, and now with Sora 2, and there's a long history for it by most big AI players, encouraging users to imitate living artists, to imitate existing art forms.
or even fake videos of somebody saying something they never said.
That's right. But that depends on, again, how you use it. So I think there are things that companies can easily do to protect creators, that they often only choose to do it when heavily pressured to do the right thing.
Mhm.
We're unfortunate. There's no need to behave like that. There's no need to give the field a bad name. And there's so much more. Just the fact that they have chosen to replace search engines instead of leaning into the AI's creative capability, where they perpetuate this narrative that the AI is right, that it should be right, and otherwise, oh, just a little bug that we're going to fix, is very, very misleading to all of culture and leading to slop. And perhaps my biggest bone to pick with industry is unemployment and how much venture funding is moving towards, specifically with the goal of replacing human labor with AI, instead of building a world where AI is used to deeply and profoundly elevate us. Lots of challenges, but I still fundamentally, I believe definitely in AI's capabilities, and ultimately I believe in people that will figure this out together. And I offer a vision for that in the book on how to do that.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that. And Maya, thank you for being a guest here today. I appreciate you sharing from, your entrepreneurship journey around, bouncing back from failures and iterating and learning. And thank you for some of the conversation here about AI and creativity and people. So really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a blast.